Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 Valero Texas Open Data Dive Show. I'm hoping that I have at least identified some of the issues that I was having last night with my show and my internet. I know it was very choppy last night, so I apologize for that again. Hopefully, I've got all of that squared away, at least a temporary fix. And then, have you made any wagers for the Valero Texas Open? We've had a few field changes. Couple of bigger names that have dropped out of the tournament. Probably Nikolai being the biggest name, Nikolai Højgaard. So would love to hear from you all. As of right now, my stream seems like it's in solid fashion, but I don't know if my temporary fix is going to sustain. So I just want to get through as much of the show as I can. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and moving forward are from both Fantasy National and the Rabbit Hole over at BetSperts. The Rabbit Hole is acquiring or merging with Fantasy National, so I am in the process of migrating all of my files and my data into the Rabbit Hole or with the Rabbit Hole's settings. It's a slow, tedious process, but been making some headway on that. But make sure you go check out the Rabbit Hole. Has everything you need to make the right wagers week in and week out. Optimize your lineups, has a tournament simulator, DFS lineup optimizer, everything you can ask for week in and week out on the PGA Tour. Go check out the Rabbit Hole. You won't regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier today I posted some research regarding the past 6 winners of the Valero Texas Open, some patterns that they all share, and players in the field this week who fit those patterns. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players I've wagered with my own money, the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Would not recommend it if I did not believe in it. It's a great article. And he continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of recent form and course history. And if you're subscribed to his article on Wednesdays, you would receive the deluxe version, which has projected ownerships, his top plays, top values, all of that. So really cannot recommend it enough. Go subscribe to Gabe's article and show him some support. Follow him over on social media. Then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. I see a few of you in there already. I'll get to you as soon as the intro's done. But we are live. Would love to hear from you all. Jump into chat with anything that you want to talk about with Valero Texas Open. If you have any lasting or final thoughts from Houston, especially since my show was quite choppy and pretty poor last night, feel free to jump in there with any thoughts of that for Houston. Hopefully you had as successful a week as I did, especially in DFS. And then, for the Valero Texas Open, who's your favorite? Who are you targeting? Who are you staying away from? What do you want to see tonight? Put your thoughts and opinions in the chat. Would love to hear from you all. If you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2026 Valero Texas Open. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Monday night with I would have said the extended forecast. I was updating some things in the Rabbit Hole. We're going to look at the extended forecast over in Windfinder. Good evening, Echoes. Good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Unfortunately, it looks like my software is starting to drop some frames again. So I'm going to get through as much of this as possible. Stream's working great. Let's make some money. Unfortunately, looks like I'm starting to drop frames again. I'll do the best I can. I've identified the problem, and I made whatever temporary fixes I could do today. But this is an issue that I'm going to have to go invest some money into. Was not able to do all of that today, so I'm going to do the best I can. I apologize if the stream gets a little bit choppy. I've had some rough internet the past couple of days. But good evening, Echoes. Good evening, Phil. Bro, I got destroyed. Was missing out on Woodland when I was betting him earlier this year. Had Hoagie first round leader. Taking him again this week. Hoagie makes a little bit more sense than he did at Houston. Hopefully you all had at least a little bit of success for Houston. Doesn't sound like Phil did. I was big on Sam Stevens, and Sam Stevens really, really outplayed his price. Obviously, being finishing solo third. Played a lot of Thor Bjornsson, which looked great until Sunday. Played a lot of Minwoo Lee. Played a lot of Goddard, who made a big move on Saturday. I played a little bit of Woodland, not enough. But DFS was certainly a positive in the week, a profitable endeavor. So we're going to try and keep the momentum this week at the Valero. But it's good to see you both in chat. Again, apologies, Phil. I thought that was you that was talking up Ryan Fox last week. I'll have to go back to the VOD and see who it was. So my apologies there. How's your all's bracket doing? Ken, good evening, Ken. Good. It's good to see you in chat. I am not going to be able to get away from the Rogers blame either. I was very high on Patrick Rogers as well. I played, I think, 40% Patrick Rogers in my lineups. I was saved DFS-wise last week and I had several 4 of 6 lineups, but my 4 of 6 lineups were Minwoo Lee, Chris Goddard, Sudarshan, like Sam Stevens. Like my 4 of 6 were all in the top 10, which saved me. Now, that means my potential earnings were certainly capped. I was not going to win any of the contests with a bunch of 4 of 6s, anything like that. But it was a profitable week, considering I had some very, very strong selections. Rogers let me down. There was somebody else that I was pretty high on. And Rasmus Nergard Peterson missing the cut, hurt a little bit. Marco Pinge, I played a little bit. So, Ken, you are definitely not alone in the Patrick Rogers letdown. But I always appreciate when somebody is upfront about that, because I try to be. So we will share in each other's misery on the Patrick Rogers front at least. But I hope, Ken, that you had at least some amount of success for Houston. And if not, we're going to try and turn around this week for the Valero just in time for the Masters. I was first after round 1, and then Mackenzie Hughes. Yes, Mackenzie Hughes. I did not play any Mackenzie Hughes, but I was surprised to see him miss the cut, considering he had been so very good there. Missed the cut on the number. So, yeah, it was rough. So hopefully it doesn't sound like much of chat had much success. So we're going to try and find our success for the Valero. I did a little bit last night, but I will admit that show is quite choppy. I've had some pretty poor internet service the past couple of days. So I'm going to try and get through as much of this as I can while my temporary fix seems to be in place. We look at the forecast for San Antonio and TPC San Antonio, the Oaks course. A lot of wind in the forecast for the tournament this week. A little bit of rain, quite a bit of rain actually, on Thursday morning. So we'll have to keep an eye on this moving forward throughout this week. See if we think a wave advantage develops. This course will play quite different if it is soft versus if it is firm. You can say that about almost any golf course, but it is quite exaggerated here at TPC San Antonio. You think about last year, Brian Harmon winning at 9 under. They had some storms early on in the week, but then it got very windy and it got very, very firm and hard and difficult. And that's what it looks like we're going to see throughout the majority of this week. But if this rain really softens up the course, then you could see some lower numbers. Perhaps the 20 unders that we've seen in years past, like Akshay, although Akshay and McCarthy ran away from everybody at 20 under, so I wouldn't expect that. Spawn at 13, Connors won at 20 under in 2019. So there are a few low scores to be had, but my guess is, and we won't know until the super forecast comes out on Wednesday, how the true forecast looks. We won't know for sure. I'm thinking it's going to be pretty difficult this week. Just looking at all of the wind, the gusty wind in the forecast. Sunday looks horrendous. looks chaotic, which looks like great drama viewing for the audience. But rain and high winds on Sunday looks like it's going to be a very difficult tournament this week down in San Antonio. So I will close out of Windfinder. We're going to go over to the rabbit hole and bet spurts. You see that I have a couple of filters here already. Moderate and windy conditions. Now I'm going all the way back to 2025 to make sure guys have enough rounds. If we were to look at 2026, I just don't know if this is enough rounds. I'll show you this just in case. I would consider this as a statistician too small of a sample size. But your top moderate and windy performers in 2026, Sepp Straka, Ludwig, Colin Morikawa, Sudarshan, Bobby Mack, Ricky Castillo, Hideki Matsuyama, Adrian Dumont Deschamps, ADDC, Russell Henley, and Tommy Fleetwood. However, if I were to include wind performance in the mixed condition model, I would go all the way back to 2025 to make sure players have enough rounds to make it statistically significant. In that time frame, a lot of the same players, but you do change the ordering, and some players rise and fall. Tommy is now your number one player. Sepp Straka, Hideki, Colin Morikawa, Bobby Mack, Mav McNeely rises. Alex Smalley rises. JJ Spawn, Ludwig, and Russell Henley are your top 10. Marco Pinge, Max McGreevy, Vince Whaley, Shooter Sean, Daniel Berger round out your top 15. Just so we capture both sides of it, your worst performers in the wind in the field this week: Ryan Palmer, who is a sponsor's invite, Nick Dunlap, Jeffrey Kang, Rafael Campos, Brendan Todd, Paul Waring, Malnati. Let's try to get some bigger names here: Carl Phillips, Matthew Pavone, Patton Kazire, Adam Schenk, Alejandro Tosti, Neil Shipley, David Ford. Max Homa struggled in 2025 just in general, let alone in the wind. You said Burgoon top 5 this week. Echoes, again, extremely small sample size, so it's hard to really ding a guy for that much for it. But in the very small sample size, Burgoon has not been good in the wind. Finau was not good in the wind. Kirk, Horschel, S.H. Kim, Dan Brown. So there's a look at some of the guys who have not been good in the wind in 2025 and forward. Another filter that we are definitely going to be looking at this week is long. I will click very long, although this certainly doesn't fall into the very long category like Houston does. But this is certainly a long course at over 7,400 yards. So your top performers on long courses in the field this week: Tommy, Ludwig, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Joel Damon, Bobby Mack, Russell Henley, Vince Whaley, Keith Mitchell, Thorbjorn Olesen, and Matt McNeely. Your top 11, just due to ties. I was mentioning field changes in the intro. If you have not seen, to be honest, have not seen, or I haven't checked for field changes since probably 3 or 4 Eastern this afternoon. So there very well could be some more, but these are the latest field changes that I've seen. Pearson Coody, Nikolai Højgaard, and Matty Schmid have all decided not to play this week. They have been taken in the field by Bronson Burgoon, Joel Damon, Ryan Moore, and Sam Ryder. So just be aware of that. Nikolai Højgaard out, Pearson Coody out, Matty Schmid out. And there could be some more. But that would require me to open X or Twitter, and I don't want to do that on stream. So if you would like to inform myself and chat of any other field changes, feel free to jump in and chat with those. So there's a look at your top performers on long courses going back to the beginning of last year. Just due to the forecast, yes, they're looking like they could get some rain, but this area of the country has been in a drought for a long time. I still think it's going to play pretty firm, pretty fast, and therefore difficult. So I'm going to check or click on the difficult filters, And if we think this changes, then I'll adjust come Wednesday night in the mixed condition model. With that said, your top performers since the beginning of 2025, when rounds have been difficult and very difficult, or scoring conditions. I'm still using the Fantasy National terminology rounds, but if you want to be technical, Rabbit Hole is saying scoring conditions are difficult and very difficult. Bobby Mack, Tommy Fleetwood, Ludwig, JJ Spawn, Russell Henley, Ryo Itatsune, Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, Mav McNeely, and Sepp Straka are your top 10 when scoring has been difficult and very difficult in the field this week at the Valero. Okay, with that, let's take a quick look at some of the stuff in the Rabbit Hole. We did take a look at the scorecard. We'll cover it very, very quickly because it may have been choppy last night. So, there are several bogeys to be had around here at the Oaks course. You got the par 4 first, third of a shot over par, quarter of a shot over par, 2/10, a 10th. Lots of bogeys to be had around the Oaks course. Now, the par 5s do present some scoring opportunities, not a whole lot. Par 5 at 602, par 5 at 604. I mean, long par 5s, that don't yield eagles very often. They are decent enough birdie chances, but not, big time. It's not a guarantee. Only a quarter of a shot under par, only 1300ths of a shot under par. Now, and I'm going to use air quotes here, short par 5 14th does go to 4/10 of a shot under par. So it's a pretty good scoring opportunity there. But you have a semi-drivable par 4 17th, quarter of a shot, 1500ths. So, the par 5s are long, pretty difficult. The par 3s are long, fairly difficult. 213, 207, 241, and then 183 does play a little bit under par. How much are you going to use scrambling this week? And ball striking 200 to 250 to the green. Scramble, I don't know if I'm going to use the exact filter or the metric scrambling, because scrambling brings in some putting. We are definitely going to be looking at something for around the green. And I'll talk about that as we get going into the show, Ken. 200 to 250, I don't know. That's actually a pretty good segue. So we talked about the scorecard. Let's talk about some of the metrics for the Oaks course compared to the tour average. And then we'll look at this also in Excel. Off the tee here, quite a bit more difficult. A third of a shot more difficult around the Oaks course. The rough penalty, however, is not very high. Players... See, I don't know how I feel about this, because I've always heard that accuracy is a pretty big deal. But this is saying that the rough penalty, like being in the rough, isn't all that bad. Rough penalty low, missed fairway penalty average. So if a player is missing the fairway, they better miss it in the rough as opposed to the fairway bunkers, I guess is what that is saying. These are pretty narrow fairways at 27.5 yards. Let's see. Anything else big about off the tee? Like good drives is less here, but I would think that's more so in the greens, as you see over here. Interesting, because distance really doesn't matter here. I'll tell you that. I mean, driving distance is a little bit higher here, but a lot of players will club down to be in the fairway as opposed to, throttling driver everywhere around here. So I've just never seen distance matter all that much. I mean, look at Brian Harmon, the winner last year. Not long. Corey Connors isn't long by any means. 2-time winner here. So, approach, very difficult to gain. At 150, outside 150. Approach is very difficult here. So we're going to be really focused on irons, I think, this week. Hitting the greens, very difficult. Hitting the greens from the fairway, very difficult. Whereas opposed to the rough is right at tour average. about 51%. Whereas the average tour event, if a player's in the fairway, they'll hit the green 77% of the time. Here, it's only 67% of the time. So that's pretty interesting. Greens could be something. I still think good drives is something that we'll want to look at. Proximity a little bit higher. Birdie or better from the fairway is much lower. Players are not going for the green nearly as often due to the long par 5s. 602, 604, 591, just long par 5s. So players are much more prudent on those. Talking about scrambling, Ken, going to look at some around the green stuff here. Around the green is a little bit easier around the Oaks course. You'll remember last week we put all of our focus in short grass since 2/3 of your around the green shots around Houston came from short grass. Much more balanced here at the Valero. 39%, 35%, 27%. But playing from the rough is much easier. But playing from these bunkers is very difficult. 40% less in terms of around the green per shot from the bunker. But you only have it 27% of the time. So I don't know. I'm open to suggestions on what we do with around the green, but we definitely need to factor it in because greens are going to get missed. I mean, players only average hitting greens 59% of the time here. So we're going to have to look at something around the green. Putting at 15 plus feet, a little bit more difficult. The one putt percentage is higher. 15 to 25 feet is difficult. It looks like distance putting is difficult here, but we're probably just going to be looking at Poa Trivialis more than likely. Scoring, interesting. Birdies are better, much lower. Bogey percentage is much higher, leading to why I think it's going to be difficult this week. Par 3 scoring, right about average, a little bit higher, but par 4 scoring is much more difficult. Par 5 scoring is a whole lot more difficult than the average tour event. So, going to be important to play these par 5s well. And then your approach ranges, boy, that is a heavy percentage, isn't it? I guess that's why you were asking about 200 to 250, Ken. But this is 250 plus. You do have a few wedges. Despite the length of the golf course, you do have a few wedges around here. You look at some of these par 4s like 347, 410, 405, 403, 342. There are wedges, quite a few of them, around the Oaks course. So, I mean, I would not be too dissuaded by looking at the 50 to 100 or even the 100 to 150. 250 plus, it's really only going to come into play, if you think about it, 602, 604, 591, maybe on one of the longer par 4s. Like, to get a 250-yard approach shot here, you're going to have to drive it less than 200 yards. I mean, even with players laying up, I don't think they're only going to hit it 200 yards. 481, that'd be a drive of 230. I don't know. But the data certainly suggests you should look at 250 plus. So we'll look at it. But I'm probably more concerned about how well a guy is doing on par 5s, since par 5s are difficult here. That's my early lean, Ken. All right, so there's a look at some of those metrics in the rabbit hole. We'll check them in Microsoft Excel, essentially Fantasy National, very, very quickly. Hey, good evening, Hanka. Thanks for jumping to chat. Much appreciated. Initially interested in Jordan Spieth. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in Jordan Spieth considering his history here at the Valero Texas Open. I do like your thought process. I will be mentioning him quite a bit later when we go through the research. He certainly fits a lot of the criteria. I just don't think, I mean, if you're talking outrights, I didn't fire him off at his number because he's generally a pretty popular player and his number is a lot lower than what I think his true value is. But if it's a number you're comfortable with, it makes a lot of sense, especially since he's been so good around here, and his irons are very, very good right now, Hank. I will say that. But thanks for jumping in chat, Hank. Very much appreciated. You look at the raw strokes gained for the players who finish in the top 30. Putting, fairly consistent. Around the green has been extremely consistent. And it's been 39% more important than the average full field course. So we definitely need to look at something around the green. Not sure what it's going to be. I'm not too worried about this minus or negative in the approach. We're definitely going to be looking at approach. 2.32. You've got a couple of lower outliers here. Last year and in 2022. Like, if we remove those outliers, it becomes 10% more important. I do think we're going to want to look at quite a bit of iron play. Putting, we're not going to ignore. I don't know how much off the tee I'm going to do. I'm leaning good drives because I don't think distance matters. You see, I mean, distance was a negative for the top 30 last year. It's really never been much of a factor around the Oaks course. So, I mean, I just don't see distance being that big of a deal. And that's what off the tee generally rewards. I could see the argument for looking at total driving. That makes some sense, because total driving is the combination of distance and fairway. So if a player is, let's say, 5th in distance and 10th in accuracy or fairways hit, then that total number is a 15, which is probably going to be number 1 or number 2. So I could see good drives, total driving. Good drives makes some sense. Greens are pretty hard to hit here, so I might look at some greens. We go across here, scoring. Usually the higher raw number is in the birdies gained, and the more consistent metric is in the bogey avoidance. The higher raw number in the birdies gained, the more consistent metric is in the bogey avoidance. But bogey avoidance is actually pretty close here. We're going to be looking at mostly bogey avoidance. Looking at par 3s, 4s, and 5s. 3s are a 1.2. Par 5s, just off your screen, it's a 1.8. So definitely the par 5s outweigh the par 3s here. And the par 3s look like they're at 175 to 200 mostly. Par 4s, probably slightly mitigated. Slightly, yep, 2.6. Most of it in the 450 to 5 and the 350 to 4. That's kind of interesting. Okay. And the par 5s are evenly split in the two ranges. Looking at proximity, I know these numbers won't mean a whole lot. This is a pretty high number here, although that's a huge outlier. If we remove that, that might make it more in line. Yeah, 75 to 100, 100 to 125, really interesting. I don't know. The 200 plus hasn't been all that much the past couple of years. Maybe that means players are laying up more, which would coincide with the increase in the wedges. I can understand that. So we've got some things to think about, but at least the data has given us a little bit of a direction. So we'll now go back over to the rabbit hole, the players in the field this week. Let's take a look at some of these metrics that we know we're going to focus on. Maybe take a quick casual glance at some that are a little bit more speculative. We'll go to the off the tee page view, and I kind of like the idea of total driving. The more I'm thinking about it, let's do total driving when it's difficult and very difficult. Why don't we try that to start? See what this looks like. Again, total driving. Adds, I'm sorry if that's pretty small font, but I'll read it to you. Adds a player's ranking in driving distance with their ranking in driving accuracy to get a total score. As in, 5 plus 10 would be 15, Or in Bobby Mack's case, 21 plus 20 is 41. And then lower the number, the better. So 41 is actually first in this field in terms of total driving. So your top total drivers when scoring is difficult and very difficult: Bobby Mack, Sudarshan, Ludwig, Colin Morikawa, JJ Spawn, Jordan Spieth. There you go, Hanka. Siwoo Kim, Marco Pinge, Rico Hoey, and Daniel Berger. Those are your top 10 total drivers. Let's take a look at good drives gained, or good drive percentage. Again, difficult, very difficult. Russell Henley, Colin Morikawa, Marco Pinge, Sudarshan, Daniel Berger, Tommy Fleetwood, Austin Smotherman, John Perry, Max McGreevy, and Lucas Glover. Not to ignore you, Phil. You said you are all in on Hoagie. It makes a little bit more sense this week recently. Just being honest. Like, Tom Hoagie's superpower are his irons. He gained 1 at Houston, gained 2 at the API. There's a lot of red here. Now, he did play well at Pebble, but he always generally plays well at Pebble. So that he's more of a horse for course. Whoops, if I could spell Pebble. Gosh dang it. He's more of a horse for course at Pebble. I wouldn't get too anxious about Hoagie this week. There's a lot wrong in here, and he's always going to struggle around the green. What's he been like here? Okay, he's been good here. Top 5 last year. Top 15 several years ago. Just out of curiosity, just very quickly, we'll check. What kind of form was he in leading into last year? Yeah, see, he was coming off the top 5 at the Players where his irons were immaculate. He was at least gaining strokes on the approach consistently. He's not doing that right now. He's been kind of hit and miss. I don't know. I don't like it. Good evening, Joanne. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully my temporary fix is helping with the stream or show quality from last night. I at least identified what the issue was. I've got a temporary fix in place. But to make it a permanent fix, I'm going to have to invest a little bit of money into that. So I'm going to try and do that either tomorrow or at the latest this weekend in time for the Masters. But thanks for jumping in chat, Joanne. Very much appreciated. Yes, you are in line with a couple of others from chat thinking about Spieth this week. So there you go, Phil. I didn't want to ignore you. I saw your comment, but I was in the middle of explaining something. Not all that excited about Hoagie, and trust me, I want to be a Hoagie believer since I am generally all in on iron play. He's been shaky, and that's the nicest way I can put that. We'll do the deep dive on Spieth just very, very quickly. He's been a whole lot better. The irons have been sizzling lately. 2.3 at the API, 5.5 at the Players, basically 4.5 at the Valspar. We all know about his around the green game. He isn't an abject failure with off the tee anymore. There's a lot to like here. There really is. Top 15, top 15, top 15. And not to mention his immaculate course history. Winner in 2021, runner-up way back in 2015. Nothing outside of top 35. Top 15, top 10. A lot to like here. So yes, Joanne, you are in consensus with a lot of the rest of chat this evening talking about Spieth. So there's a look at what we were looking for off the tee wise. I might take a casual glance at a different filter, but it's probably going to be total driving and or good drive percentage come Wednesday night in the mixed condition model. We are absolutely not going to ignore approach play. Your top approach players in the field this week at the Valero, Colin Morikawa. Which, by the way, that's an interesting question for chat. What are you all doing with Colin Morikawa? Coming off the withdrawal from the Players, he's had a couple of weeks off. What do you all plan to do with Colin? I'm undecided. I am more so leaning as fading him, like I generally do with injuries like Ryan Fox, things of that nature. My lean is to go and fade him, but this is a very good fit for him, and he was playing exceptionally well before the back. So, would be interested to hear what you all think in chat about Colin. Only one time, it was a couple years ago, he lost the world putting. Not too surprised about that. So, I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Your top iron players in the field this week: Colin Morikawa, Siwoo Kim, Austin Smotherman, Daniel Berger, Sepp Straka, Hideki, Zhe Ching or Marty Doe, Thorbjorn Olesen, Sudarshan, and Joel Damon. Ryo Itsatsune just outside the top 10 there. Ludwig, as I was talking about, Jordan Spieth has been playing exceptionally well. His irons have been very, very good. McGreevy, Mitchell, so on. Mac Meisner have good irons lately. He seems to fit this course well. I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. Mac Meisner generally performs well on places where he can take advantage with the driver. And that's just not the Oaks course. Yes, it's a long course, but you actually don't hit all drivers around here. I know that seems silly, but there are times where it is just the right decision to hit 3-wood or even iron off a tee on a par 4. So I would be a little bit wary of that. Having said that, his irons have been pretty darn good lately, Hanka, to answer your question. 1.5. Of course, he gained 5 at the Cognizant, but lost it all on the putting. Meisner, I would generally try to target when he can take advantage with the driver. That said, what's his performance here? He does have a top 10 a couple years ago. I'm not super stoked about it, Hanka, but if you get a good price on him, okay. I would think Meisner might be more of a top 20 type of bet as opposed to an outright. That's just my inclination. I'm just kind of lukewarm on it. Not great. Let's take a look at greens. When I'm sure San Antonio is going to be listed as hitting greens as difficult. Green and regulation difficult. So when it is difficult to hit the green, green and regulation accuracy difficult. When it is difficult to hit the green and regulation, your top performers in hitting greens in that situation: Hankley Biota, it is only one tournament, so be aware of that. Austin Smotherman, Marco Pinge, Sudarshan, Will Zalatoris, Ryo Itsatsune, Sepp Straka, JJ Spawn, John Vanderlaan, again only one tournament. Adrian Sadier, again only one tournament. Until he shows me he can back to where he was before the injury, one round would even do it for you on Morikawa. Yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting thought process just because this is such a good course fit for him because of the general emphasis on accuracy as opposed to distance. And he'd been playing, there's a reason why he was the most popular player at the API or at the Players, excuse me. He's just been playing extremely well. So, interesting thought. I'm with you as well, Joanne. I do like Straka this week. I'll do the deep dive on Straka just very, very quickly because I got a lot else I want to get to tonight. But Straka's been playing extremely well for those who haven't been paying attention. Top 10 at the Players, a complete game, as we call it. Gaining in all 4 of the major strokes gained categories. Top 15 at the API. The irons are pretty good right now. They're consistent. They're not like Jordan Spieth spike levels, but they're consistent. 3.25, 4.5. Genesis was just slight. He had a pretty poor tournament. That's fair. Pebble was solid. 2 1/4 at the Pebble with the irons. 2 3/4. 2 around the green. He's pretty darn solid. He's a pretty good putter. Like, Sepp Straka seems like he'd be a pretty darn good fit for this place. Top 25. He's gradually gotten better year over year here. Or at least time over time. Maybe not year over year since he skips. But 2019, miscut. 2020 was canceled for 2020 reasons. 2021, made the cut. Wasn't great. And then top 25 3 years ago. I'm with you, Joanne. I do like Straka this week. Maybe not in an outright because I'm pretty sure he's pretty low odds. But I am targeting him. I'm thinking about using him a lot in DFS at the low 900 price. Let's take a look at... I do want to look at some overall proximities. Man, this one's tough. I can see the argument for 50 to 100. Kind of see the argument for 100 to 150. I can see the argument for, long distance. So we'll take a look at 50 to 100. Oh boy, this is an ugly, ugly leaderboard if I ever saw it. That's a little better. Your top performers from 50 to 100 yards early in 2026 playing in the Valero this week. Hideki, Hank Lebioda, Bryce Garnett, Camilo Villegas, Matt McCarty, Sam Ryder, Michael Kim, Daniel Berger, Russell Henley, and Sepp Straka. If we look at 250 plus, Will Zalatoris, Eric Van Rooyen, Bronson Burgoon. I believe that was you, Echoes, that mentioned him earlier. Bronson Burgoon, Adam Svensson, Brendan Todd, Ludwig, Hideki, Chandler Blanchet, Christopher Rayton, or Raytan, however you pronounce that, and Emiliano Grillo. Definitely going to look at around the green. I'm probably going to be pretty conservative tonight. Just look at around the green until I figure out exactly what I want to do with it. Scrambling would make some sense. Sand saves or around the green, like sand stuff might make some sense too, since it's pretty difficult around here. So your top, just in general, around the green performers: Tommy, Hideki, Nick Taylor, Andrew Putnam, Alex Noren, Brant Snedeker, ADDC, Eric Cole, Danny Walker, David Lipsky. I'll tell you what, I think it was you, Ken, that was asking about scrambling and stuff. Let's do a little bit of a combination of both. We'll do scrambling from sand, which is essentially your sand save percentage. Your top sand save players early on in 2026: K.H. Lee, Brant Snedeker, Bryce Garnett, Hideki, Bo Hostler, Adam Svensson, S.H. Kim, Nick Taylor, John Vanderlaan, and Seabez. Definitely not going to ignore putting. We will expand the time frame and go the same courses it seems like we've been looking at for the past month and a half, seemingly. Memorial Park, Pete Dye Stadium, Quail, and the TPCs. Oaks, Sawgrass, Scottsdale apply. Your top putters on Poa Trivialis, going back some years: Matt Kuchar, Sam Ryder, Denny McCarthy, Seabez, Brendan Todd, Chad Ramey, defending champion Brian Harmon, Matt McNeely, Alex Noren, Bo Hostler, and Matthew Pavone. So I agree that putting needs to be a decent factor this week. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it and allocate it in the mixed condition model. Definitely don't want to ignore scoring. I know I'm going through a lot of things in here tonight, and I apologize, but I there's a lot to look at for the Valero. So when scoring is difficult and very difficult, your top birdie getters: Sudarshan, Haotong Lee, Keith Mitchell, Ludwig, Michael Thorbjornsen, Hank Lebioda, Alex Noren, John Vanderlaan, Bobby Mack, and Tommy Fleetwood. Just be aware of some of these small sample sizes here, like Sudarshan, Haotong Lee, Lee Biota, John Vanderbilt, very small sample sizes, but they performed well at getting birdies in that difficult tournament that they played. Bogey avoidance, when it's difficult, Suter Sean, Kensei Harada, Jimmy Stanger, Davis Chatfield, Pontus Nieholm, Webb Simpson, Haotong Lee, Vince Whaley, Russell Henley, Bobby Mack, Tommy Fleetwood, Mac Meisner. Boy, a lot of small sample size up here. A lot of small sample size, so just be mindful of that. Last thing we're going to look at, definitely par 5s. Par 5s are difficult here. And I definitely don't want to ignore that. Your top par 5 performers when par 5s are difficult. Zach Bauschow, only 1 round. Jordan Spieth, Takumi Kanaya, Russell Henley, Camilo Villegas, Dylan Wu, Neil Shipley, Brian Harman, Adam Schenk, Chris Ventura. Okay, running close on time. I have a couple of things I need to look at or show you all, particularly the research. So I'm going to try and get through as much of this as I can. This is performance at the Oaks course the past 5 years. So this is going back to 2021, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So obviously once this year gets entered, I'll drop the 2021 off, so on and so forth. Performance at the Oaks course the past 5 years. Russell Henley's only played once, but he finished 4th. Tom Hoagie's been very good in the past 5 years. 2 times, average finish at 10th. Defending champion Brian Harman. Keith Mitchell's been great here, and even putting it well. So be mindful of that. Jordan Spieth, 4 for 4, average finish inside the top 15. McCarthy, 4 for 4, average finish inside the top 20. Lucas Glover, 4 for 4, average finish inside the top 25. So lots of strong performances, and this is one of the more predictive courses on the PGA Tour. So course value come Wednesday night in the mixed condition model, course value is going to have an enhanced, I can't say a big, it's going to have an enhanced percentage in my calculation as opposed to other weeks, because this is a pretty predictive course, as we'll see here in a moment. All right, let's sort on a couple of these key metrics. Your top iron players, past 5 years, specifically at the Oaks course. Henley, it's only 1 time. Kevin Yu, it's only 1. Kevin, boy, look at that. Kevin Yu doing Kevin Yu things, gaining the world, ball striking, losing the world in the short game. That is Kevin Yu to a T if I ever saw it. Jordan Spieth. Of the players who have played multiple times, Jordan Spieth is your top iron player. Hoagie's up here. Snedeker has hit his irons extremely well around here. Thorbjorn Olesen has been good in 2 tries. Lucas Glover. Chan Kim is an alternate. That's why he's highlighted in orange. If he were to get into the field, be mindful. He's been pretty good here in 2 tries with Chan Kim. Tommy's been okay. Not great in terms of average finish, but 2 for 2. Noren, Woodland, McNeely, Andrew Putnam could be interesting. Hideki. So there's a look at some of your top iron players the past 5 years. Let's look at putting. Your top putters past 5 years at the Oaks course. Look at that. Defending champion Brian Harman leading the way. McCarthy has been great. S.H. Kim. Seabez. Matt Kuchar. Brennan Todd. Don't think I'm excited about Brennan Todd, but he's played well here. Bud Cauley. Vince Whaley. Hostler 5 for 5. But boy, that's ugly. I don't know if I could back Bo Hostler with that. Keith Mitchell has putt extremely well here. Strillman. Cole's putt well here. Not done much else correct or well. Tom Kim is 0 for 2, but putt well. So there's some of your top putters. Let's go with bogey avoidance, and then I'll look at par 5s and I'll show you the research. Bogey avoidance. And I'll also show you some birdies gained as well. Henley. There's Denny McCarthy. More so in the bogeys gained, or bogeys avoided, excuse me. Brian Harman, pretty evenly split. Kuchar. Spieth. Brendan Todd. Lucas Glover. There's Novak. pretty good at bogey avoidance here. Keith Mitchell, balanced. Tom Hoagie. Ryo Satsune's been good bogey avoidance, not necessarily birdies gained. So there's a look at some of your top bogey avoiders past 5 years at the Oaks course. And then finally show you some par 5 before the research. Top par 5 performers, Sami Välimäki's only one time. Thorbjorn Olesen. S.H. Kim again. Tom Hoagie's performed well on these par 5s. Fishburne, Hideki, Poston, Ventura, Bud Cauley, Griot, Matt Wallace, Sepp Straka, Whaley, Todd, Charlie Hoffman's 3 for 5, Brian Harmon. So there's some of your top par 5 performers. Sort on best average finish and take you to the research. I posted this over to social media. I know I posted it to X. I need to get better about posting it to X or to Instagram. But I posted this over to X or Twitter. We'll start with the winner matrix. How have these past champions performed at the Oaks course in the years leading up to their win? Well, you see Brian Harmon finished top 25 the year before, but had some historical success. Batia, not a whole lot of success. Corey Connors is a 2-time winner here, but generally plays well here. Spawn had a top 30, but missed the cut. This dotted line represents 2019. Why do I have 2019 as the separator? That is when the Oaks course moved to its current spot on the schedule, meaning the week before the Masters. As you can see, in years past, they used to play this in April or even May. So the Bermuda would have been live. It would have just played a little bit differently. So only going back to 2019, it loses a little bit of the pattern. But 5 of the 6 times, your winner made the cut the previous year's Valero Texas Open. And if you extend that time frame, look at that. That is some strong correlation. The only one that didn't was J.J. Spawn. So that was the first thing that popped up, or that I noticed. For outright wagers especially, make sure the guy that you want to wager made the cut at the 2025 Valero Texas Open. More than likely. I mean, Spawn's an outlier, but that's pretty good, strong correlation. That's the first thing I noticed. Let's take a look at some other what they did in their most recent start. Brian Harmon missed the cut. I believe this is Connors. Missed the cut. Missed the cut from Connors again. 2019, yeah. So their most recent start, not a whole lot to go on in terms of finishing position. But look at the irons. Harmon's irons were terrible, 3.9. Connors, 2.1 at the Players. But these others, gaining 6, gaining 6, gaining 8. They were un fuego with the irons coming in. Look at the fairways gained. Every single champion was positive in terms of fairways gained in their most recent start. Everybody but Brian Harmon was positive in terms of good drives gained in greens. The irons were just immaculate. So if we dig in a little bit further into that, I want you to notice a commonality between these champions. Yes, his irons were terrible the tournament before, but within a month, I understand March 2nd and April 6th is a month and a week. Just go with it here. In a very short time span, he had a performance where his irons spiked, gaining almost 5. Batia gained almost 8 and gained 5 earlier in the year. Connors gained 3.5 within a month of winning. Spawn gained 6, gained 5 within a month of winning. Spieth, 6, 5.5. I mean, irons were just in fuego. Connors again, gaining 4.5 within a month of winning the Valero. So that was the second thing that really popped out to me. I said a month on social media. It's technically 5 weeks because like somebody like Brian Harmon, March 2nd to April 6th is 5 weeks, but I just made it nice and easy and said a month. For this year, go back to the Cognizant. I would be comfortable going back to the Cognizant. Anybody from the Cognizant, or anytime from the Cognizant forward, make sure the guy you want to wager has had a spike performance week with the irons, preferably gaining 4 or more. Doesn't have to be 4. It's technically 3.5 because of Connors. But within a month, make sure they have spiked with the irons. Third thing that I noticed, because I realize I'm dropping some frames again, so hopefully it's not too choppy. Last thing, look at how many top performances these players had. Brian Harmon, 3 top 25s in the recent calendar year. Batia, 5 top 20s in the recent calendar year. Connors, 3 top 25s, 2 top 20s, 2 top 25s, 3 top 5s. Connors is the exception. He only had 1 top 25, but it was a top 5 at the Sony. So the third thing to note, make sure your guy the player you're wagering has been in contention several times. I think I said multiple top 25s. I believe was what I mentioned on social media. So if we take a look, made the cut at last year's Valero, multiple top 25s this calendar year, spike irons since March 1st, comes down to 10 players in the field this week. Berger, Finau, Tommy, Ryo Itsatsune, Patton Gazire was quite astonishing to me, but fit. Keith Mitchell, Chad Ramey, Ken, you and I are going to bemoan this, but Patrick Rogers fit. Jordan Spieth, and Gary Woodland. You mentioned Sepp Straka, Joanne. He did not fit because of not making the cut at last year's Valero. You will. I do like Sepp this week. But these 10 fit the criteria for all of the outrights, or at least the pattern of the outright winners the past 6 years. So I'll leave you all on that. That's going to be it for a Data Dive show this evening. Thanks to Echoes, Phil, Ken, Hanka, and Joanne for jumping into chat. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. I'm hoping to have my internet issues solved by Wednesday night. That means I'm going to have to go in and invest in some hardware for that. I'm hoping I'll have that fixed by Wednesday night, but I appreciate your patience as I get all of that sorted out. Thanks again for all the support. Very, very much appreciated. For all of the wagers you've made so far this week for the Valero Texas Open, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Valero Texas Open, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.